Hi, my name's Scott the Miniature Maniac, and today we're going to chat about someone that I think that you should know. What up, Mini family? Let's wax poetic about YouTube for just a second. Being a creator on the platform and also simultaneously a miniature painting enthusiast made me realize that there's something similar about our community as it relates to other communities. Let's look at the YouTube vertical of cooking for a second as an example. If you guys watch cooking videos on the internet, you probably know who Andrew Ray of Binging with Babish, Claire Saffitz of Bon Appetit Food, Alex French Guy Cooking, Ben Ebrel from Sorted Food. But how many of you also know Patricia Wells, Andre Soltner, Jacques Pepin, and Julia Child? Jacques Pepin! I have no idea that's how you pronounce that name, but it sounds French. Okay, maybe that food analogy didn't land for all of you, but how about a miniature painting one? How many of you know Emil from Squid Bar Miniatures, Adam from Tabletop Minions, and Brent from Goobertown Hobbies? Now what about Dimitri Faseshko, Francesco Farabi, and Pepa Saavedra? Now you're starting to understand the YouTube bubble. Creators and viewers alike on YouTube tend to stay on YouTube, whereas professionals don't make YouTube videos. They're too busy being professionals. Sometimes these two worlds collide with people like Gordon Ramsay, but it's very often that they do not. The default assumption is that a schmuck like me is a subject matter expert. Let me tell you, this number doesn't always correlate to one's proficiency in their chosen field. It more than likely means that I play the rat race that's YouTube a little bit better than the average guy. There's this interesting separation between professional X and YouTuber X. So this video is my attempt to bridge those two worlds, the YouTube viewer and also the professional miniature painter. Meet Roman Lappat. This is a miniature painter that you likely don't know or know a little about, so let me tell you about him. Roman is a figure painter from Augsburg, Germany, who makes his living painting commission, teaching weekend classes, and doing private lessons. He's painted thousands of minis and taught hundreds of times. He has a signature painting style that's recognizable from far away, but I think we're getting a little too far ahead of ourselves. Let's go back in time. Roman, like many of us, got his start in the miniature world in the late 90s due to an interest in the gaming aspect, but quickly fell in love with the painting side of the hobby. Roman was always interested in art. In the mid-2000s, he was going to school to become an art teacher, and during that time, he took on the side hustle of commission painting, starting out painting armies like many commission painters do to earn some extra dosh while in school. Eventually in 2009, he abandoned the idea of becoming an art teacher to pursue his passion in miniatures full-time. At this point, he transitioned away from painting whole armies and units and painted individual models for collectors. This was the early stages of his career. He was painting everything he could to be able to afford a living. And while he wasn't necessarily struggling, the life of an artist isn't always as secure as that of an engineer or a doctor, for instance. At this time, he also started to teach workshops about beginner painting and basing. Roman was and still is passionate about teaching, which makes sense because he wanted to be an art teacher, so teaching miniature painting fitted perfectly. About a year before this, however, Roman started a little project that would come to define a lot of his early and mid-career, a website called Massive Voodoo. Massive Voodoo was born out of the frustration of having to answer the same miniature painting questions across various different German forums. The convenience of being able to link an article as opposed to answering the same question 10 times over is a convenience that I am definitely familiar with. It soon thereafter became kind of a lonely project, however, so Roman invited a lot of his friends to co-author articles on the site. One of the more notable frequent contributors was Rafael Apica, one of my favorite painters, but there were many great contributors to this website. Massive Voodoo was a website that I first explored when I was discovering what information the internet had to offer about miniature painting in 2014. In the mid-2000s and 2010s, miniature painting blogs were huge. There were tons of them, and Massive Voodoo was at the center of it. In fact, Roman is still making regular contributions to the blog to this day, and it would take a long time for an individual to comb through the wealth of knowledge on that website. Roman Lappat's body of work is vast. There's a lot to see, but if you had to paraphrase it, there are some key pieces everyone should know about. The first one is probably Last Light, his Slayer Sword winning piece in Germany's Golden Demon event in 2013. This piece took him over 450 hours to do over the course of a 3-month period. He spent so much time at the studio that it actually caused problems with him and his girlfriend. He danced on the edge of insanity while pile driving further and further into this utterly massive 127 miniature diorama. You can actually find a step-by-step article series for this piece on Massive Voodoo. Another fantastic one to see is The Night Watch, which was spiritually linked to Rembrandt's The Night Watch. This piece has such intense mood. If you're not artsy, that might sound a little bit ridiculous, but just look at it for a moment. Seeing this piece makes my mind wander with story. This little town huddled together at night in front of something valuable to them. What's coming to steal, murder, and maim might be big and scary, but as a unit, they're stronger than apart. You get the sense that this is a ragtag town, as all these characters aren't clad in the same uniform. It's not a unit of soldiers pumped out of a barracks. It's a warrior, a priest, a wizard, and a ranger. It's such a pleasure to pore over and examine. You might think you have Roman pegged in the really cool diorama category, but this guy does it all, and some of his best work comes to life when he's painting busts. A particular favorite of mine is this Templar Grand Master burning at the stake. His eyes are crazed and his suffering is apparent as he yells out in rage for what he likely thinks is injustice being dealt to him. There's so much nuance going on in the flesh tone, greens and yellows, and this massive bright highlight on his head that you likely didn't notice because it just looks natural. His shirt is beaten and dirty like he recently had been in a brawl when he was likely arrested and put on this stake. He didn't go down without a vicious scrap. There are so many more pieces from Roman that are just like the few pieces we examined, emotionally filled to the brim. Check out his gallery on Putty and Paint. It's absolutely immense. Can you imagine that this individual, Roman Lappat, when asked if he was an artist in a 2014 interview, said no? I wonder if he still thinks that, and if he does, why? Hello, Roman?
I do hear something.
Excellent. All right, cool.
Somehow I was really feeling uncomfortable back then when people named me an artist, because I for myself, I see, for me as an artist is like these old masters with oil paintings that hang in the museum. So I really felt uncomfortable about that, but somehow it took over that a lot of people named me artist, and I just had to accept it. And art for me is mainly happening in a person, in oneself. So art is not something that people consider as art. It works like that in the real world, but usually art is actually happening in yourself. It's like you can go on a hike and see a beautiful sunset in a forest or something, and this feels like something for you. It touches you. If my work does speak to other people and they consider it as art, I'm happy and thankful. But in the meantime, I would rather call myself teacher. I mean, that's my main focus on the things that I do, that I'm rather pass on knowledge and the stuff that I've learned in the past and help others on their journey.
You might wonder what kind of person he is. Well, I can tell you he's incredibly humble and kind. When I was slumming it in the 1,000 subscriber territory on YouTube, I reached out to him and several other blogs with my beginner series, asking them to share it on their blog, and he was the only one that did it. He has a huge heart for miniature painting, and it's evident in how he conducts himself and his art and all of the projects that he is a part of. It can be really easy to see all of these models and be intimidated by such an artistic force and a legacy that Roman is leaving. It might be hard to think of a time when Roman didn't have skills that he has now and struggled. Did Roman ever struggle? Absolutely. He struggled with self-confidence in the beginning. He didn't paint like other people does, and he still doesn't to this day. He didn't labor over his models to get super smooth blends. He just did what made him happy. But if no one else is doing that, is it wrong? Is he wrong? This is definitely a feeling that a lot of people can relate to, and pushing through is very difficult. From 2009 to 2011, Roman Lappat painted 350 models a year to figure out what his approach to miniature painting is and to figure out how he found joy. In all of my research of Roman Lappat, I've come up what I think is a foundational belief of his. Trying to copy is a good way to learn, but living your life as a copy is a road to disappointment. When you forge your own trail, you become the object of other people's copying. There is no standard to live up to because you are the standard. This is how to paint happily. There's no comparison to be made. It's just your miniatures and your journey. It's such a wonderful sentiment and a thought that I hope to live more closely by. Roman is one of the great miniature painters of our time. You should know about him. Support this artist in any way you can. I actually bought one of his figures while researching him because the energy his pieces give off is amazing, and I wanted a piece of his history in my cabinet. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There are a ton of other miniature painters that I could make a video similar to this one about, but Roman Lappat is a great one to start on. If you guys want to see more videos like this, let me know in the comments section below. If you guys like this channel and you want to support it, there are a number of ways that you can do that, namely buying merchandise on my store, buying my miniature that I produced, or my Patreon campaign that has a bunch of fun rewards like a Discord server where you can hang out any day of the week and chat about your miniature painting projects, or your favorite professional miniature painter. You can also buy the hobby equipment that I recommend in the description. Any purchase using those links earns me a little bit of a kickback at no extra cost to you. Subscribe or die! But most importantly, don't forget to paint more minis!